Okay, here we are with Michelle, class number 2.
Okay.
I'm really excited for you because when you came in with this, I said, wow, look at the color.
It's out there, but I love it.
It is.
Yeah.
So you're going to be finishing. I'm going to show people how you chalk painted this and finish up.
Yes.
So we're going to let you roll with that, Michelle.
Okay.
Thank you very much for doing this.
No problem.
Okay.
So I left the legs undone. Well, I left one leg undone. And so what I first started to do was I have some coarse grit sandpaper. So it's 100. This is 100. You could use 100 or 80. And look for any like really rough parts. If there are any gouges that you need to sand out. Not that bad. So then I go to the 220 and give everything just kind of a fine sand. And with this chalk paint, you don't really need to sand too much. It's going to stick no matter what. But if there's any like ridges or bumps and bruises and everything, you'd want to sand to get those out. Then typically what I do to clean the piece is take some denatured alcohol. Rub it down real good. Get all the dust off and any little grit or anything. So then you can see over here, I started painting this one already. So I like to put an undercoat with the chalk paint, and it's nice to put it, the orange is going to match the fabric, so if it shows through it all, that'll help. Also, it covers up the wood a little bit better, so you don't need to prime. If you were using like a mahogany wood and a white paint, you would definitely need to prime because that's going to leak through. But I'm just going to stir this up a little bit. Get my brush. This is just again a base coat. It doesn't have to be, you want to do it thin, but make sure you get like in all the crevices. Again, you don't want to put too much paint on your brush, just something. Don't overwork it. I tend to do that sometimes if I see a spot. I'm like, oh, I have to go back and get that. But it's better just to kind of leave it and let it dry. So that's the bottom coat. Okay, and then we need to wait about an hour or so for that to dry, to put a second coat on top of that. So we're just gonna leave that like that. Okay. This is where I'm gonna wash my brush to do the other leg. So I washed the brush, and it's wet, but again, with the chalk paint, it doesn't really matter. It's usually a good idea to put a little bit of water into the paint because it thickens up too much, and you want to do nice thin coats. So I don't mind using a wet brush. Okay, so again, then we're just gonna let that dry. So I put on one coat. So what I would do at home normally is then wait an hour for that to dry and put on another coat. And then look at it over, and sometimes I do a third coat if it needs it, if there's a lot of detail. Like on the wicker, I did really, really, really light coats because I had never painted wicker before, so I just really, really light coats. I didn't want it to get all gloopy into the holes. Okay, so when that's done and dried and the extra coats are on, I take this really fine sandpaper. It's this is 400 grit, or you could get 600 grit even, and I go over the piece like this. The chalk paint has a little bit of grit to it, so you'll feel it, and it feels a little bit gritty. So if you want a really smooth finish, this helps to help that. And you can see it takes a little bit, sometimes it takes a little bit of paint off, but then the orange is peeking through, so it gives it a little bit of a distressed look. Some people go and make it really distressed, but I tend to just like go on the edges a lot, where it would wear down over time, and maybe at the top where you're grabbing the chair. And that's it for that. And then the last thing I would do is put a top coat on. So for this, I would just use wax. I haven't done that yet. So, and the way you would do that, I can open that up and show you. It's like a soft wax, and you could use. I have a special wax brush, but you could just use a rag or a paper towel, and put it in here. Just show you on this section. So just really push it in to the chair. And when you're done with that, you can take a white rag is usually what you use, but a paper towel works too. And really wipe off the excess and push it in and wipe off the excess. And then after that dries, the last step is I would usually go through it with a rag again and just really push in like this. And it gives like an extra little shine to the piece. And that's the steps for painting my chair.
Thank you, Michelle. That was fantastic. Now we're going to get going on the upholstered part, right?
Yes.
You're going to finish
I'll
that
finish
at home?
this at home. And
Okay. So we're really excited today. Let's strategize. We're gonna clean up and then come right back.
Okay.
So Michelle, after you're gonna take this home and finish painting this.
Yep.
So what's nice about your chair is that all the upholstery at this point is independent of the chair frame,
Right.
so that you're able to take it home and do some work, and that was kind of cool. It's not always like that, right?
Yes. Yes.
As we're gonna actually do some fixing on this. Fixing, I mean, when I mean fixing, you know what I mean by that, fix fabric and padding and the like.
Mhm.
Because the way the manufacturer did it, I don't recommend anybody to do it like that. Because they have it, they just select fabric for that purpose of the tufted piece that was on the back and
Right.
et cetera. I think we talked about that the last class. So we're going to strategize. What we're going to do today is we're going to measure, and because you're a little bit more advanced than a lot of other people, I'm going to have you measure everything, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to, I don't mind labeling things for you,
Mhm.
and then I want you to just go through the process with what you've learned and fill in all the blanks, and then I'll check it like I normally do.
Right.
But I even want you to measure the cushion.
Okay.
So normally with beginners, we kind of put the cushion aside, so don't worry about that right now because,
Yeah.
you know, it has more components and people are a little bit, it's more of a mystery than the rest of it. So let's get going. Let's
Okay.
put your chair down. I'm going to bring your pieces over. If
Okay.
you need to reference your chair, you can, but I don't think you will need to do that. So let's start with the body first. So bring that over here. I'm going to label I'm going to label everything in the proper description of each, right? So we have an up and down, side to side, like we normally do, you guys, right? Very simple.
Right.
Up and down, and that's as you're looking at the piece. You're looking at the piece. Let me just show you. Looking at the piece of furniture. Up and down measurements, side to side measurements. You know, the reference when you have anything up like this is top and bottom. When you have something that's laying flat, it's a front and back, but the direction is still, right?
Yep.
Side to side, front. I don't know if you can get that, but you'll get it as you're going along on the cushion. I'll explain that in a minute. So what we have, first of all, we have your deck. We're going to call this the deck, okay? That's underneath the cushion. So that's called the deck. I suggest if there's enough fabric that you upholster that in the fabric. Some people upholster it in a different fabric, but if you have enough, and I think you do, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you have the deck, and you have two measurements for the deck, front and back, side to
Okay.
side, front and back, side to side. And then what you have is the inside back, IB. And we're going to make a little note that you want to tuft it, right?
Yes.
So the reason that note is important, tuft, right, is the fact that you need more fabric to do that. And I'm going to let you kind of go through the motions, but I will give you a tip. When you're measuring tufting, you want to measure with a soft tape measure,
Okay.
not a hard tape measure,
Yeah.
right? And you want to go in each button and measure, and then still give you 3 inches that you normally give.
Okay.
Okay, both side to side and up and down. You need a lot. It pulls in. You need a lot of fabric for this.
Right.
But you don't want to overdo it either. I mean, too much fabric is, I don't know if you've ever had too much fabric to handle sometimes. It impedes your progress, right?
It's hard to.
Yeah, so I'll check all your measurements. So I want to see, I want you to go on
Okay.
your own. So that's the inside back. And then you also have the outside back, right?
Mhm.
Okay, now, on the outside back, you don't have a piece, you don't have the outside
No,
back.
so we'll have to do it.
So you're going to have to go to the frame of your chair.
Right.
And we discussed that you're going to have to go to the outside frame because we have to pull the buttons a different way. We discussed that, right?
Yes.
So we're really strategizing before we do any stapling or cutting out of fabric. This is the strategy, right? So outside back.
Yep.
So those are the three components of your chair that are going to be fixed, right? Fixed. Now the cushion. Okay, so you have the cushion, top and bottom, right?
Mhm.
And then you have the cushion boxing, right? Zipper. And then you want piping on the cushion, I would imagine, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll call it welding, piping, or cording. All the same thing. Some people, cording, they think more of the pre-made stuff, but you can call, you know.
Okay.
I go back and forth, not to confuse people, but so she has 1, 2, 3, 4, actually 5 if you include the top and the bottom
Yeah.
components to the cushion
Okay.
that you have to measure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, I don't know, if I'll give you a refresher on the cushion, just, right now. You want to cut the top and bottom 2 inches oversized for now.
2 inches,
Just
okay.
for now.
Okay,
The boxing, you can get an exact measurement on,
Okay.
up and down,
okay.
and then side to side. Do the best you can. I'll check all this, don't worry.
And side to side exact, or? should I
Side to
overlay?
side, you probably want to look maybe 4 or 5 inches longer.
Okay,
Okay, to where you think the zip is going to be, or you
Okay.
can see it on the cushion where the zipper is.
right,
Now on zippers, whatever the boxing is, you add 1.5 inches and divide by 2 for both sides of the zipper.
okay,
So if it's 4.5 inches, what you're cutting your boxing,
yeah,
you add 1.5 inches, 4.5, 5, that's 6, divide by 2, that's 3, and that's what each side of your zipper is, 3 inches the width. And then the
Okay.
length, you want to extend that too. Did you get all that?
I think so.
Okay, we'll
Like
see how you do.
an extra like 4 or 5 inches, or just
Yeah,
a few inches?
the boxing I like to see 4 inches because you have to flap it and put the zipper
Okay.
slide in. On the
The
zipper
zipper
you
doesn't
don't,
have to be
yeah,
that.
maybe 3 inches.
Okay,
But again, you can see it. As long as it's oversized.
Yeah.
As long as it's oversized, you're okay.
yeah.
So there you go. I'll leave this here with you. You have your measuring tape, and we'll let you go to it. Just let me know when you're done, and I'll check all your measurements. Start cutting. Start cutting. Do you want me to check?
I do. Well, I had a question
Okay.
as I was doing this one.
Let's hold this up.
I want to definitely check this one.
Okay.
Because I just added 3 inches, but then I was like, oh wait, did he say
Overall. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fine. As
yeah.
long as you're going in each
Yeah,
button.
so I went here because this is where the buttons
Mhm.
were. Okay, I did this.
And you're going, I love the fact that you're going from the furthest point side to side.
Yeah.
So what
That
most
was like
people forget,
27.
what most people forget is the button in here.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to add for that. That's what I like to see.
Okay.
So what I usually do when I'm measuring this is I'm going like this, and then I actually bring my tape measure down, and then I go like this, and then I bring it back up, and I go like this.
Okay.
And then, and so on. Let's see what I come up with. So by the time you get over here, you're actually at 29.
Okay.
So add 3 to that.
So 3 to that.
You know, I wouldn't go with the formula on something like this. Some people might say, well, why doesn't he just measure that and add it?
Right.
Because tufting comes in different forms. So some of it's near the surface.
Right.
And some of it, like the old traditional tufting, which is the proper tufting, by the way, that can be indented about 4 inches from the surface. So you really have to be careful when you're measuring that. So it's advisable to do what we're doing, go in each buttonhole.
Okay.
Right, so let's see, now this is probably gonna be short too, right?
Yes, it will. Yeah.
So we're gonna go here, and then we're gonna flip it here, and then flip it back here, and then flip it here. What did you get on that?
I had 32. So, but then.
Actually,
not
you
too
were
bad.
close, I'd add another inch to that.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
But that was good, Michelle. So we have this cut, we'll measure, just put this aside. And go to our, what do we have, outside back on there, next?
Or we didn't do the deck yet. if you
Deck,
want
let's
to
do deck. I bet you did this, I bet you got this nailed. So what you got, so we'll measure from, by the way, we'll show people, it's where you're gonna tack it, right? Which is right about there on the bottom.
Oh, you know what? I did only go here.
Yeah,
So
that's
I was
okay,
gonna
but-
add more.
See,
Yeah.
this is what I like about the online classes.
Yes.
Because it brings up, you know, I mentioned this before, people who pay for the classes already know this, but you're getting a lot more information because of this, I think.
Mhm.
When I'm teaching on YouTube, I sometimes don't think about these little things
Right.
until a student brings it up, which is,
Right.
that's you. So you want to go where you're going to be tacking.
Right.
And then, I want to show you what I'm doing here. I know that there's not much filling that's going to go on here. Okay, so but I'm keeping my
So
tape measure loose. I'm not tightening it. I'm not
Yeah.
tightening the tape measure. Because I know at the very least we're going to put this felt back on maybe.
Right.
So I go right to where I'm going to be tacking on the back is 23 plus 3
Okay.
is 26.
26. Yeah.
So side to side, let's do the same thing. Just going to go to where I know I'm going to be tacking. I'm going to go loose over here. I'm going to go to 25 plus 3, 28. And these are your actual measurements. What some people do, and I have no problem if people do this, but they have to remember to add the 3 inches. They'll go to the exact, and then they'll add their 3 inches. I incorporate the 3 inches while I'm measuring. I think that's probably a good habit to get into.
Mhm.
I think what can relieve people, and I know that you've already done it, which, except for your zipper measurement, is in fractions. I know that, but everything else is rounded out, right?
Yes.
So that's really good. So it gives you a little bit more confidence that adding 3 inches in your head while you're measuring, as long as you're not dealing in fractions, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I'd rather have one measurement on there. Some people like to, you know, if they're doing the 2 measurements and they're adding the 3 inches on their paper, they'll rewrite it to make sure. It's very important that when you go over to the cutting table, that you can read your own handwriting, and there's just one measurement for 2 measurements for each piece, so that you can easily reference it when you're away from your piece and you're on the table. It's really important to reference it really nicely. So that's done. Deck is done. The next one is the outside back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the chair over to here, just to show people. I'm curious how you measured this, Michelle. Did you reason this out what you're going to do here?
Well, this is the widest.
Right.
Shoot it up there, and I
So-
just went from here to here.
That's good.
Yeah.
So presents, you know, we have to think, let's talk a little bit about how you're gonna finish this. So
Okay.
the front's gonna be all done
Mhm.
at the point of the outside back. And we can't recess the outside back like it was, okay? Because we have to do it, you know, the outside back was on first,
Right.
remember?
Yep.
We can't do that
And
that
then
way.
do the buttons, right?
Well, let's talk about that. Actually, let's talk now about this. Hold on a
Okay.
second. 'Cause now I'm thinking that we can't do it because of the tufting. Right?
Yeah.
We talked about that. So we need this, we need this area in here for our tufting work. And it's got balls of cotton attached to the twine, and it's just impossible to do all that.
And then still have the.
Yeah, and I don't like those clips. Those clips are not gonna work for us with any other fabric, especially that fabric's much heavier than the fabric they had on there. So they picked the fabric for those clips purposely, you know, the manufacturer. They went down to a science. I was surprised that a lot of, I felt it but didn't see the clips through the back. I'm surprised I couldn't see them because those clips are metal clips and there's not much in between.
Mhm.
So we don't like them, we can't use them.
Okay.
So now, we have a little bit of a problem with your recessed frame here.
Mhm.
So, but we definitely have to come out onto your frame to finish this off. And I think what I'd like to see is probably on the bottom. We're gonna measure this big enough now to assume that we might have to come attach it to the bottom.
Okay.
I don't know how you feel about that, or I'll ask you because you're the artist, right? Or do you want to frame it right? Take as little of the wood frame as possible. Which one?
That would be my preference.
Okay, so why don't we
Yeah.
measure it like that?
Okay.
So you might want to make a note somewhere
Okay.
on your paper that that's what you're going to be doing. So what did you get side to side?
I said 27.
So it actually measures 24, 27 is perfect because it's
Yeah.
going to give you enough room. And what did you measure up and down?
26.
Perfect, perfect. When we get to the back, just to warn you, the back on this is going to be at least a class.
Yeah.
Because we have to make some adjustments on this. We have to bridge right in here with like probably cardboard tack tape
Mhm.
and bridge this.
Okay.
Because upholstery doesn't look good when it's going
When
around
it's
like
going around,
yeah.
yeah.
So that's good. We got that measured. Now let's go to our cushion. What did I do with the hip? So let's see what you got. What did you get front to back on the cushion? Front to back. Oh, by the way, for people, before I move on, I want to just show, do you have a piece? Usually chalk is better than magic marker. We're being naughty with the magic marker. Because magic markers bleed
Yeah.
through. We don't want to, you're not going to use this to mark your fabric.
Exactly. Yeah.
But what I would recommend that people do with a piece of chalk or, is just make a reference to the front of your cushion. I know it looks obvious on your cushion, but
If it was a square cushion, it would be.
yeah,
hard.
or if it taken back
Yeah.
very, very slightly,
Mhm.
it's hard to determine. Or if it didn't, some cushions don't have zippers. So it's just good habit forming to mark your
Okay.
direction, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So let's say on the cushion front to back, what did you get?
I said 21.
Good, because it's 19 from here to here, which it bows, it has a little bit of a,
Yeah.
doesn't it? That's interesting. Just bows out a little bit. Side to side, what did you get?
24.
Beautiful, it's 22 plus your 2 inches. And what did you get for your boxing?
I put 4 inches for the boxing for like exact, but it was kind of 3 3/4. I don't know.
What did you go with, 4?
I went with 4.
So if you go, that's your cut measurement, 4?
That was the exact. I was thinking, but
That's your cut measurement though. When you
Yeah,
say
yeah,
exact, that's your
right.
cut measurement. So if you go 4, you're gonna have a smaller cushion. Is that what you want? You can do that. So if you cut 4 and you take a 1/2 of an inch on each side, your cushion's gonna finish at 3.
right.
Which this is 3.5.
It's more 3.5. So
Yeah.
okay, so I'll put 4.5.
So go 4.5.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna reuse, what we try to do is encourage people to reuse the foam.
Right.
As much as possible, because it's a oil-based polyurethane, it doesn't break down. So it's not like latex, so we try to encourage it. So
Mhm.
so let's say it's 4.5. And what did you get all the way around to where the zipper is?
56.
So let's see if you added onto that. Beautiful. You added about 4 inches for yourself. That's great. So that's the boxing. So now with our zipper,
To do,
we have to go 4.5 plus 1.5 inches, right?
right, so that'd be 6.
No, is that
And
right?
then-
4.5, 6, 6, right? And then 3 inches, right?
Yep.
So 3 inches is going to be each zipper side. We got that with our formula. And side to side, what did you
I
get?
said 26.
That's perfect because it gives you about 3 inches more, and that's perfect.
Mhm.
So now the only last thing is the piping.
Right.
So what we want to try to do is when we're cutting the fabric, we want to try to keep your longer measurements in mind, like your boxing and your
Right,
welting.
and we're gonna do double piping too, so that's.
Oh,
right?
we should mark up. We think of double piping on the outside back.
And on the front, right? Is that what we talked about? Isn't it?
No.
I think.
Yeah,
that
we
is what
did.
we talked
So
about.
actually, we should get those measurements too. Why don't I just
Okay.
quickly get those measurements for you? If you're gonna do double piping on the inside back, which you're kind of forced to do, I think,
Yeah.
the outside back should be double piped too,
Right.
right? So they're probably the same measurement. I'm just gonna give you this
Okay.
measurement, but don't let me forget your cushion.
Yep.
But this is really important because if you go to the cutting table just with your focus, just the body of the chair, and then you're just making cross cuts the whole time, and you're not taking into consideration that you need this long piece.
Right.
And the beauty part about that is that you don't want seams anywhere. Okay, so if you keep a long piece, if you have that in mind, you can get your double piping without any machine piecing in it. That's very important. That's the sign of a professional.
Mhm.
That's a sign about somebody that's really thought it out before they even take scissors to the fabric. That's really important. So I'm glad you remembered, you
Yep.
reminded me that it has a double piping. So the double piping should be cut about 4 or 5 inches longer. So
Okay.
let's just, we know it's gonna be done right to there, right?
Mhm.
And then to here, we'll take 38 plus 38, 76, I'd make it 80 inches.
Okay.
So both the inside back, specify inside back and outside back double piping, 80 inches long. Normally now, depending on the fabric, you know, if it's a thin fabric, you want to cut it about 3 inches.
Okay.
If it's a thicker upholstery fabric like yours is, you can go 2.5.
Okay.
Although if you oversize your piping, it doesn't matter because it has to be trimmed down after it's
Right.
made, right?
Right.
Okay, so
Okay, so-
you
I'll
can
say
go
3 inches.
if you want.
And
Yeah.
is that the same for the?
The piping on this head, you know, you can get away with 2 inches.
Okay.
2 inches. Some people cut it 2.5, but remember that on a thicker fabric, if you oversize the single piping, you do have to, cutting it down is kind of a hassle. Because
Right.
you're cutting 2 pieces, you're cutting both the thicknesses of 2 pieces, does that make sense?
Mhm.
So you probably want to make sure that you cut that 2 inches.
Okay.
Okay, so what did you get all the way around?
I said 75 inches. Let me see.
So I've got,
Oh,
you're a
got
little-
lot less.
you're a
lot
little,
more.
you're a little shy with that.
Yeah.
I got 40 inches as the halfway point, plus 40 is 80.
You know what, I did it right on the edge here, which, but,
On the
okay.
edge? See where I am on the back?
Yeah,
I'm all the way to here is 40 inches.
okay,
So
So
40
80
plus 40 is 80
plus
plus
something.
another 4 inches, 84 inches.
okay.
So you need 2 of those, remember, write down 2 of those. So 284 by 2 inches. So this is really important. You're gonna have those long pieces ideally. I should mention something too. Cutting on the bias, Michelle?
Mhm.
Totally overrated in upholstery fabrics, totally overrated. So you can be thinking about, and I think, how many yards of fabric do you have?
I have 4.
So that's close.
Yeah.
So we need to pay attention to this. So 4 yards, what's 36 times 4? 36 inches times 4.
72, double that is 144.
144.
Yeah,
So you could get 144 piece, right?
right.
Or another way of looking at that is that you could get all of your double welts and your single welts out of the end of the fabric without machine stitching it, as long as you pay
As
attention.
long as it, right.
So you can't
So,
be.
but I need, okay, so I need 2 inches, 4 inches, 10 inches. Yeah, so like 10 inches on the edge.
10 inches on the edge.
So,
You see how, when we get to the cutting table, we'll talk a little bit more about
Yeah.
this. But that's why, and we'll talk more about this, but that's why it's not advisable to do what I call cross cuts. You know, you can do that on certain things, like if you have a lot of fabric and you're doing a sofa in the very beginning, we recommend squaring up your fabric as much as possible, but we always have in mind that we have a lot of fabric left over.
Right.
So our strategy is a little different here because you only have 4 yards.
Yeah.
So we're not advising you to do these cross cuts. We're advising you to keep that piece, and we'll talk more on the cutting table.
Okay.
Okay. We have a very motivated student in Michelle today. She's already finished up or almost finished up painting, chalk painting her chair. She measured the chair, checked the measurements, and now she's gung-ho about cutting the fabric. So this is really going to be a very productive day, I think, for her.
Yep.
So with the first determination we need to make is the direction. You have a velvet.
Yes.
So we're going to make a determination about nap. Nap is pretty important when it comes to shading and wearability on your fabric. So in automobile upholstery, when they do a velvet or velour, they actually do it backwards on the seat to kind of lock you in. It's kind of a safety feature. The velvet is helping you safe in your car, believe it or not.
Okay.
Never thought velvet could be used in a role like that, right?
Yeah, no.
But in furniture, residential, we want to make sure that when we slide off the chair, we don't want to slide off the chair when we're driving. At home, we do slide off the chair, right, to get up. So you want to make sure the nap is going forward. So why don't you just check, there's 4 directions it could go in. So why don't you just check to see what you think.
I mean, it seems like there's a line that goes this way.
Which is extremely unusual to have a fabric. You actually have a velvet that is railroadable. Usually the nap's either this way off the roll or this way, and you have to re-roll it accordingly. Believe it or not, Michelle has a velvet that you can railroad, and what I do is I just turn the fabric the correct way for you. So when you're cutting a velvet or any fabric at all, once you determine the top, you want to make sure that you're working from the bottom of the fabric. So, so take out your clipboard and show people all the measurements. So she's got her up and down measurements, side to side, which coordinates with the fabric, right? So that's really important. So what I would do is, wherever you want to put your measurements down on the table is usually either that way or this way. I don't know which is better for you. Okay, so your goal, we talked a little bit about this, right? It's about leaving
like
that
10
10 inches if you can. So
Yes.
what your first thing you want to do is measure the width. I think I'm going to do that with you just to kind of give you a little briefing, and then I'm going to let you go on your own.
Okay.
And I have a straight edge out here for you. I think the first thing I would ask you after I talk to you is probably square up your fabric using the edge of the table. You've done that, right?
Yes.
That's because the table's square, right? On your velvet, I wouldn't tear it. Some velvets you can tear. This velvet, if you tear it, it's just going to make little pull marks.
Okay.
So you are actually going to have to just cut it.
Yeah.
Okay, instead of just, some fabrics you can tear, like it's easy, but
Yeah.
not this one. So what I'm going to do is, so 10 inches did we figure? Up
10
at the top?
inches, so we might.
Well, let's
see what
measure
happens.
the fabric first. So if
Okay.
we go 10 inches, let's use a little math, right?
Yeah.
50. Let's say call it 58 inches.
Okay.
So if you go 58, take 10 off that and go 48.
Yep.
So what we're going to do is we're going to look to see what we can get out of a width of fabric. We do want to be really stingy with the fabric, especially in the beginning, right?
Right.
We want to take our good measurements first. So you're going to be kind of all over these measurements. And that actually becomes your important measurement, right?
Right.
Because you're railroading the fabric. Does that make sense? Normally, if you're coming off the roll the right way, it's these measurements that become important, right, in the beginning. So these are your important measurements. So as I'm looking down, I see 26, which is by itself. So I would kind of skip over that and go to my next one, which is 33, which doesn't do much any good, right?
Right.
Then I look at the 27, and I start getting a little nervous.
Yeah.
because why am I nervous? Because all those 3 measurements, based on our
Okay,
48 inches, we want to leave that up there.
Yeah.
Right? Now keep in mind, you have 144 inches of
Right.
right? So now you've got two measurements I want you to float with. All right?
Yeah.
This sounds like, we're at MIT, right? But I think what you can do in the beginning with the first couple of cuts, right, is go back to your 58. So this is what I would be doing. I said, oh boy, I don't like these with the 48 inches. How does it work with the 58, right?
Okay.
And knowing that I got enough length, does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
So even before we start cutting, you really need to plot this out. You really do. And this is good habit forming for people, right? So what I want you to do is base it on the 58. Now,
But-
what do you see with these measurements? Do you see something that looks better with the 58?
Well, actually, if you did a cushion with an outside
That's
back,
exactly right.
I mean, that's 48 actually.
You're
so
gonna have to
it's-
start incorporating your cushion
Yeah,
with all these measurements. And that was why it was smart to measure everything, right?
yeah,
So I think you're gonna be okay.
yeah. I think
Just in the beginning, if you can get in the beginning your first couple of cuts using as much fabric, the 58 inches, that you're gonna be good.
Mhm.
Then you're gonna start breaking it down, keeping that long one in mind. Does that make sense?
Right.
So if you want, you can chalk it up too and have me check it
Okay,
if you're not sure.
okay.
Okay? So there you go. What's
If
that?
like this is off the bottom here, should I, because I'm sure I did it?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Let's,
Good.
yeah, actually, I should, this is an important, when you have a railroadable fabric, you need a big cutting table.
Yeah,
And actually, if we were to turn this ping pong table, actually I should tell people, ping pong tables are ideal to use for cutting fabric because really it's the only stock that you can get that is 54 inches now. Hold on, let's measure. Yours is 58, that's your
Yeah, so
problem.
that's the problem.
That's a good problem to have, but not for the cutting table. Let's just measure the cutting table again. So our cutting table this way is over 60, it's 62 inches. So let's turn this.
okay.
Let's turn this so that the camera can see what I'm talking about too. I'm gonna ask you just to hold this up just like that for a minute. So let's turn the table. That should be big. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes. Even I was confused there for a minute.
Yeah.
It's like, because it's a railroad of fabric. Now that's fine.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Funny, the chalk doesn't want to,
What's that?
the chalk doesn't want to.
The chalk not working for you? Did you forget the trick, Michelle?
Well, yeah, I need to sharpen it, don't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's okay.
Yeah. The nice thing about that chalk is more powdered than it is
Yeah.
a school chalk. I wouldn't recommend a school chalk or your chalk that you use for your chair because it just stains the fabric.
Yeah.
That shouldn't stain the fabric.
So I got a lot cut, so I want you to check these if you want to check them.
And I do want to check them, and also, I know that you probably know this, Michelle, because you're a little bit more experienced than some of the people might be at home. But she hasn't cut anything, but before
When
you know you're going to label it appropriately before it leaves the tables. That's the time to get
Yeah.
your labeling in the back in its proper place and what it is, right? So what you
Right.
want me to check?
So this was, let's see, this was the outside back. I did label it, but again,
Okay.
it's hard to do it when it's still
Right, that's
not cut.
exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So as you get more experience, usually once we determine, once you get your confidence, you can start cutting one at a
Yeah.
time. You don't even have to do measure any more than what you've done. And sometimes what you can do to speed up, but I don't recommend beginners to do this. But you can, instead of just making solid lines, but everybody likes the solid lines. This is like when you're advanced, you could just do a little check
Yeah.
on that. Now, the reason she can do that, everything except your boxing, right, that met the exact measurement. The reason that you could be a little casual with your measurements as you progress and you get more confidence is the fact that they're oversized and it's not a pattern, right?
Right.
So you can speed up. That's where you speed up. That's where you get into, like if you have your own shop, you're getting more professional and you need to quicken your pace, but you have to have the confidence to do that, right?
Right.
So in the beginning, this is good. So I'm going to check the deck measurement is this is
Now
the
that's the
deck.
outside back. This was the deck.
So what's this one here?
Outside back.
So what's the up and down
The up and down was 27,
and the side to side?
26.
Okay, good to go. Cut that out, and when she cuts this out, what Michelle's gonna do, because she's working at the bottom of the fabric, that's the top of the fabric, she's gonna cut it out, and she's gonna roll this way, and she's gonna write right in the center of the outside back,
Yeah.
not at the corner, because if she does the corner, right, there's some doubt, because this is almost a square. There
Right.
could be some doubt later on, when
Right.
we go to pick up our outside back, which is gonna be later on. So make sure it's, when you cut it, it's in the middle. The description is outside back, top. I even go through the whole description. I just don't write outside back.
Uh-huh.
Just for my head, I want to make sure that I don't want
Right.
to be second guessing myself. So that's good. What's your next one? What's
That was
this
the
one?
cushion.
That looks good to me.
Yeah, 21 by 24.
You can almost tell just by looking at it. That what I'm looking for is make sure your measurements are right?
Uh-huh.
The up and down, side to side. And what's this one?
That is the deck, so that's 28 across
Mhm.
and 26 up and down.
So you're good to go.
Okay.
Let me just
Yeah.
hit this. There you go. Okay?
Yeah, and then, yeah, okay, thank you.
And make sure, the other thing, you're welcome. The other thing I want to make sure that people do at home, not you, the deck. When you mark your deck, you mark the front of it, right? Front deck, not the top.
Right,
Does that make sense to you?
right.
Okay.
So like, yeah, usually I just put an arrow and I know, but okay.
Right,
that's
well,
fine.
you could do, because you've been doing it, use your own system.
Yeah,
And people will have to, the point
but
is
it's the
that,
front or back, not the
right.
top or
So
bottom.
when you're dealing with a cushion, they'll see more on the cushion why that's important,
Mhm.
okay? So,
Yeah.
good job. Michelle's just finishing up labeling her zipper, which gets the same labeling the tops, so that when you sew it, you can orientate that. Even the zipper, the directions should be going the same way, right? So, wow, Michelle, so we're gonna close out now because we did a lot today, I think. We really did, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you again for showing people the painting, and maybe you'd be willing to do other pieces with the painting, because I think people have a real interest in that.
Okay, that would be great.
So that's the ending of 2, right?
This is the second
Number
one.
2.
Yep. Number
So we can't wait for what's in store for us next week.
two. Okay,
Thank
great.
you, Michelle.
Thank you.
You're welcome.